This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. I have the extraordinary Steve Litchfield with me. Let's not mince words. Hi, Steve. How's it going?
Well, hi there. Well, I used to be extraordinary. I'm now just ordinary, but I'll take the compliment.
Look, people need to know you are the person who got my career started in smartphones, really, because I used to buy them until I met you, and you connected me with Nokia's PR via the warm world, influencer. Before influencers were a thing, before Instagram, before TikTok. You connected me with the right people at Nokia, and I started getting devices, and that snowballed into me getting devices from other manufacturers. Thank you.
When do I get my royalties from this career I've launched?
I wish that I made enough money to share royalties with you. But as you know, this career of tech journalism, tech influencer, unless you're Marquez, you're not making money.
Yeah.
You know this.
I'll take a few likes and recommendations on social networks. It's fine.
I will do that. So, folks, if you're listening, this is it. Get Steve some love. We'll give you some idea of where to find things at the end. But, Steve, thank you for getting me started. And if you don't know Steve Litchfield, okay, folks, there are some people out there that are really big at, mobile photography. I'm one of them, but Steve is definitely one of the OGs. Like if in the early days of phone cameras, Steve was the guy you talked to if you wanted advice, I would say. So we're going to do a retrospect. I'm going to let Steve drive this podcast. We're not going to talk about the news this week. I'll keep it all for next week, folks. This is going to be a history lesson in smartphones this week. Thanks to Steve, who's going to drive this with a bunch of devices to show. So if you're on Patreon for the video version of this podcast, yes, you will see some really cool. I don't have anything to show, so it's all Steve. But for those of you who don't know, there's a Patreon version of this podcast. If you're listening with the audio, the free audio version, you get the Patreon version video. You get it a day in advance every week for $5 a month. So patreon.com/TNKGRL. Consider supporting me. Steve, take it away. Where are we starting?
Well, given the focus on imaging, and as you say, I was kind of there at the start in the early 2000s when cameras started to make their way onto phones. We'll draw a line under the very first camera-toting smartphones, which were 0.3 megapixels. Yes,
exactly.
That 0.3, which wasn't usable to anyone.
No nothing, right?
Yeah. But then we get to 2005, I think I'm right, and I'll light the screen out. We'll give you a first glimpse. You've got to name this phone.
Okay, N91?
No, close.
N90.
N90. The N91, I think, was the music
one. Yeah, but because of they had the design, the shape. I saw that it was the camera one immediately, but I was trying, that's not the N93, right? Because the N93 was later, right?
Yeah, we'll come to that. So yeah, this is 2005, and it does the whole transformer thing where you can angle. People on the video will love this. Hopefully, you can angle the viewfinder how you like, angle the camera how you like. So the main camera can be your selfie camera at full resolution, and it was also the first camera smartphone, I believe, with autofocus, 2 megapixels, which was just about enough, but full autofocus, which I thought was quite impressive at the time.
Yes.
So that's the N90, and these amazing hinges. Just watch. Phones just don't do this anymore, do they, Miriam?
No, I mean, how our good friend Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, has a series called When Phones Were Fun. This is what we're talking about. This is like a transformer phone. It looks like a normal flip phone when it's shut, but then you open it up and, the screen rotates. For those of you who are not watching the video, the camera is the actual hinge part, and it rotates as well. Should we mention the N93i?
Well, we're guessing there.
Standard on that, or are we getting to it? Oh, you have it right there.
Well, oh, yeah. This is the original N93, complete with lens cover. I still have the lens cover.
And I have one too, by the way. I have the silver one.
Well, I'll come to that. It's got the giant, literally giant 3 megapixel, 3 times optical zoom camera, which doesn't twist on the body.
Do you know the sensor size on this?
I'm tempted to say it's something like 1/2.3, somewhere in that region, 1/3, which wasn't huge for the time. But then this was 2006. This was a year before the iPhone, and this is when camera phones were going through an insanely creative development splurge.
Well, I would like
if
to
you
say that
Yeah.
Nokia's camera phones and Sony Ericsson's camera phones, because, honorable mention to Sharp and to Samsung at the time as well. We didn't see those phones as much because they're more prominent in South Korea for Samsung and Japan, but there were very few companies doing it right in imaging, and Nokia was definitely up there, right?
Yeah, with their chips, the sensors, the zoom in this case, 3x zoom. Although sadly, the autofocus mechanism in my, what is it now, 21-year-old model, 20-year-old model is actually defunct. But the camera does power up, and the whole phone does still work. And there's the T9 keypad. Yeah, the N93i was interesting because if you look at the side profile of the N93 here, this is again 2006. Notice it's really quite chunky, and the criticisms they had was let's try and slim it down a bit. So they changed the cover screen to be embedded in a kind of a mirror effect. This is the one you've got, the N93i, which is slimmer, but in order to do that, they severely compromised on where the microphones were placed. Now, if you look at the screen. As I'm shooting video, this is the very first smartphone, I believe, very first phone to shoot DVD quality video, which was actually 640 by 480, which is done near DVD quality, certainly in America, which is the American standard. But the microphones are there and there, forward facing, so you can capture a perfect stereo audio image while you're shooting your video.
Nice.
And it was absolutely superb. The downside was that if you did do zooming, the microphones you could hear the motor. So what they did on the N93i, they moved the microphones up here somewhere, pointing further away from the motor, but it was also gave more muted audio. So all the N93i video I shot was very disappointing because the audio was muffled.
And as a side note, we did not see a variable optical zoom like this in a phone. I think there was maybe Sharp did one, and maybe Samsung as well. Again, those we couldn't get, but the ones we could get, we didn't see that again until Asus did that on a Zenfone, Android Zenfone. I want to say around 2013 or something like that, 2015 even maybe. And then, of course, we saw it again on Sony. Oh, you have one here. Oh, wow. Okay, wait, no. That is a different story. That's a point and shoot essentially grafted on. Is that the Galaxy Zoom?
K-Zoom, yeah.
K-Zoom, yeah.
And it still works. So it takes forever to power up, but that is it in fully working condition.
Okay.
Anyway, on with the quiz. You got the N93 guess before I even showed it on camera, which is a bit disappointing.
Well, I mean, I figured that if you're talking N90, we're going to talk N93. And I was at the N90 and N91 confused because the N91 was a music phone with a little hard drive in it, folks. Because, that's back during the iPod days, and we couldn't get a lot of storage. Flash was still super expensive, probably still less expensive than now. But as you know, Flash is out of control right now. What's the next thing?
This is the easiest one of the lot. So I'll just show you the back and you'll name it in 1 second flat.
Oh, N95, the original?
Yeah. I do have the 95. I do have the 8GB version as well, but this is the original. Okay. Which to have a protective cover for the camera is such a nice feature.
There was a time when you and I would rant and absolutely on any phone that did not have a protected lens cap built in or some sort of, because this was before sapphire glass and stuff. I mean, to be fair, with sapphire glass now on most camera phones, the high-end ones anyway, it's really hard to scratch that lens. You get it dirty, fingerprints, but that's easy to wipe on your sleeve or something. So we were very, very aggro about it. But at the same time, look at how thin phones are now. There's no way you can do that. Show the profile of the phone so people can actually see. It's about a 1.5 centimeter phone, right? Maybe 2.
Yeah.
And you can see the headphone jack there, which is at the time was a very unique thing.
I forgot where the headphone jack was for a moment.
Right. And then this was a mini SD card slot, not micro. It was before, I think. This is past MMC, but mini, I believe. Yeah, and
stereo speakers, which are not always a given.
Show the slider again, the media side of it.
So this particular N95. My working one died. This is a dummy one.
This is a
dummy. You get the idea. So there's the media controls. You slide the slider one way, you get play, pause, etc., or gaming controls if you're into the N-Gage gaming, and then that way around you get the T9 keypad. So it's a really lovely design, and that you'll see a bit more of that in about 2 minutes' time.
So right around the time that I met Steve, and before he hooked me up with Warm World, Nokia's influencer PR, that was around 2008 or so that we kind of got introduced. right before that, I was buying phones from the carriers. And in California, there was a return policy that said that within 30 days, you could return any electronics with no question asked, full refund, no restocking fee, everything back. So I would go to the carriers and basically get the phone full price. And I had service on most of the carriers at the time. I paid for that. And I would just test the phones, review them on my blog. And, and so I bought an N95. Now, it was not officially available in the US. The N95, the better one, the newer one, made it to the US officially with North American bands. But I don't know, did the original N95 come out as a North American? I kind of want to say it did.
I think it did, probably on AT&T.
Yeah. Anyway, I bought the European unlocked model. I paid over $1,000 US. I don't know with the inflation calculator what that would be now. But at the time, look, I worked in video games. I was making a decent amount of money. It wasn't a big deal. And I knew I was going to keep this. So this was a phone that I bought and kept. And I only kept it for like about a year. And then I sold it and I got good money for it. I regret selling it, of course, because now it's a museum piece. It's one of the most pivotal phones, since we're talking about the history of phones, folks. We've shown you some cool stuff, but N95 is up there with iPhone, and we'll talk about iPhone, but it's one of the absolute critical game-changing devices, right? Why is that, Steve?
The N95, I want to save that for later because I'm going to come to my top 4 influential phones of all time. But N95 is in there, but I want to explain why in a moment. I want to carry on this imaging lineup because I'm trying to fox you.
Sure.
I don't think I'm going to succeed. I should explain that all of these run Symbian and Symbian OS because that's kind of my specialty. As I'm semi-retired now, I kind of have poured these Symbian devices. I write them up. I've got pages online explaining why they were good, why they were bad, and why they were significant. This is the next tester for you. It has got a physical camera shutter, but it probably it doesn't say on the back, so I'm still testing you.
I love this phone so much.
Go on, name it.
N82? No. 85? No, 85 was later. 82.
This is the N80. Actually, do you know what? This is the N86 8 megapixel. But 86. I've also got.
Wait, isn't there an N82?
There's the N82.
That's the N82. Okay.
You name a phone, Miriam. I've got it here somewhere.
Was there also not an N80? 86 is what I'm thinking about, right? The 8 megapixel one. That was the one you just showed.
Yeah, there was an N85, but it didn't have a top-notch camera. But the N82, I will just show you that because it had the Xenon flash, which is the point at which.
Steve, that was the first phone I got from Wormworld.
Okay, yeah.
It was great. And then the N86 I got later. But N86 was 2 years after that, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry. I went slightly out of order there. I got my phone.
So now we're past iPhone. So just to be clear, folks, chronologically speaking, since we're going to go back to the N95 and the iPhone, the N95 was announced in the winter of 2006 and just before the iPhone announcement in January in 2007, the big Steve Jobs presentation that is, the most memorable presentation of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I ordered mine and got it I want to say probably in the spring or just after winter. I got it January, February, March 2007, just before the iPhone was actually released in June. But I had it and it was, 5 megapixel autofocus camera, GPS, Wi-Fi. It had everything: stereo speakers, headphone jack, mini SD, incredible. Yeah.
You're veering away from the thing I'm going to talk about later, but that's fine. So this is 2008, I believe. This is the N82 with the Xenon flash, which I thought was significant, but modern processing and sensors mean you don't really need flash anymore.
Well, at the time, I think it was significant because it was like an N95 without the sliders and more affordable with a Xenon flash.
And you could actually take it for a phone camera or to a low-light indoor event and actually take photographs, whereas you couldn't do that with any other camera phone at the time.
Exactly.
There was a Sony dumb phone with a Xenon flash, and I had that, the 750i. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, that's right. K750i, Sony Ericsson.
Yeah.
We have to give Sony Ericsson some props. There's also 850 later on, which is around the same time as the N86. And those were all dumb phones, but they were incredible. I had them all as well. And, and then eventually when Samsung became more popular, the US carriers started carrying some of their dumb phones with cameras before Galaxy, before Android. I mean, there was a time there where you could buy essentially what we have as ultra phones today. You know, these camera-centric, whether they were dumb or smart, like smart being essentially Symbian at the time, you know, because iPhone and Android did not have these cameras yet. It was like if you wanted the camera phone, you either went dumb phone with Sharp or Samsung or Sony Ericsson, or you went Nokia, right?
Yeah. So this is 2009 to put it into context. This is the N86 8 megapixel.
Great phone.
The unique feature, well, apart from the fact it's got the same dual slide as the N95, only it was far superior. That it still feels rock solid. The rails and everything, the mechanisms, all metal.
And it had
inside.
A glass front, right? Which is much better materials, metal and glass.
It was it wasn't quite Gorilla Glass, but it wasn't far off. It was a reinforced glass front with one of the first AMOLED screens in the Nokia and smartphone lineup. So this is 2 years after the original iPhone. This was iPhone 3GS territory. But then we come to 2010, which is significant for one of the iPhones we'll come to later.
Wait, didn't the N86, wasn't that the first phone with an ND filter?
I thought that was the N8, which I'm about to show you. You've just ruined the next one, Miriam.
Oh.
This is the Nokia N8, which I'm sure you would have recognized anyway. Also,
yes.
A lovely bright Xenon flash. One of the biggest sensors. Well, it was an outstanding sensor for the day. Of course, by today's standards, it's small, but it was something like a 1
I still have one of those.
1 over 1.8 sensor, something like that. It's got a mechanical shutter, neutral density filter. Took fantastic photographs in any light conditions, and it still takes fantastic photographs today. And the processing is all natural. You know, there's no attempt whatsoever at doing anything to the image it captures.
And I think it's important to mention this is one of the first with the Express Music 5800 Symbian phones with a touchscreen. Correct?
Yes. This is about 1 year on from the 5800, so they kind of refined it.
Was this the first capacitive? Oh, Aja. There was an Aja phone that had capacitive.
The Nokia X6, which I've also got, I can show you if you want.
X6,
the X6 was 2008,
the angular, yeah, I remember that.
There were several capacitive attempts, some with LCD screens, some with AMOLED. The 2010 crop had this and the E7 and the C7.
And the E7 was the one with the clunks, sliding keyboard that raised up like that FX Tech followed and is iconic to this day. I think, it started with the N97, right? I mean, obviously, but the N97 did not have capacitive. And the N97, the N97.
I'll tell you a story, Miriam. I went to the launch of the N97 and as part of the giving out press review units, they handed us, all about Symbian at the time, an N97 each and an N86 each. And you'd have thought the N97, with all its flip-out goodness and gadgets and keyboard and everything, would be the one I gravitated to. And the boring form factor that looked like the N95 from 2 or 3 years ago, I thought, well, that's nothing. But in fact, this was the one I went for because it had by far the better camera. This one felt like it was a solid phone that would do real business. And the N97 just felt plastic. And ultimately,
it was. Compared to this, and I agree with you 100%. Plus the imaging aspect, you and I were mobile photography, camera phone people. So
yeah. All my phones are now completely out of order, Miriam, but I'm going to reset you with the final one in the Nokia lineup. And of course, this one needs no introduction.
808 PureView.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the king of smartphones. Imaging for about 2 or 3 years. This was even outperforming the 1020 at some point.
Oh, yeah, because it didn't have OIS, but it has such a larger sensor and it had the custom ASIC. Who made that ASIC again? Who
I think it was Toshiba, I think.
And it basically did the PureView sub-pixel interpolation. What we now know as binning. It did that in hardware in the ASIC, and it was very unique. The other thing, so no OIS, but a huge sensor. The Lumia 1020 did not have an ASIC. And of course, it did have OIS, but it had a smaller sensor. So, yeah. Yeah,
so the 808 took its photograph and did all the resampling in about a fraction of a second, thanks to that custom chip, which was something like 100 billion pixels, sub-pixels rendered and computed per second. It was astonishing for the time, and it took them 5 years to develop. But for the 1020, they couldn't afford to do all that again and make it work with Windows Phone. So they said, okay, let the processor, let the GPU in the phone do it.
Credit to that Qualcomm had come out with their first, essentially what became the Snapdragon line. And that was in the 1020. And it had a lot of more oomph than whatever ARM chip was in the Nokia 808. I don't think they could have done it at all in the ARM chip of the 808. So.
Yeah, but the 1020 took famously 3 or 4 seconds after taking a photograph in order for it to do all that massive resampling from 41 megapixels down to 5, do all the pure view stuff, and save it as a JPEG and save it as an underlying RAW file, which was the clever bit because you could do image reframing. I noticed you retweeted my video on how to reframe in both the one of the recent iPhones and also in the Lumia 1020, which is a fascinating idea.
Yeah, no, I think this is the thing people don't necessarily understand, that 41 megapixel at the time was a ridiculous amount. Most phones at best had 12, maybe 16 megapixel cameras. And so 41, we're like, what? But the idea was this binning for low light performance and noise reduction, but also the ability, as you said, to output 5 megapixel photos to bin down to 5 and zoom digitally, but without loss, like what we have today, essentially, on a lot of our phones with the main sensor when you go to 2x, right? And so it was remarkable. It changed the game because it was the beginning of computational photography that, I've talked on this podcast since day one. So,
and we should also not forget that this was RGB resampling. We were taking 41 megapixels and not working in blocks of four green, 4 blue, 4 red. This was taking the full resampling across the full 41 megapixels, not doing a 12 megapixel quad Bayer.
Exactly.
It made so much difference in terms of the purity of the image. These days, of course, you've got so much compute power, you can kind of simulate it and fudge it.
Well, so if you look at worse phones in general, I'll give you a good example. If you go to Tom's Guide right now, I have an iPhone 17E versus iPhone Air comparison. I wanted to compare the single camera phones, phones that only have one rear cameras.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the zoom samples, they're okay up to about 3-4x, fine, right? Because the sensors are big. But if you look at some of my sample photos, there's skyscrapers in the distance in San Francisco, and you can see how the 17E sensor is worse. They have the same algorithm, the same processors, essentially, same ISPs, but because the sensor is worse, you get that rainbow effect on the windows of the skyscrapers. You get that still with the Air, but less. And I think that shows you what Steve's talking about. So if you ever zoom in with a phone without using the actual telephoto lens, and you see this kind of weird rainbow effect, moire effect on some patterns that you see in your photo, that's the caused by this fact that the RGB filters are on groups of 4 pixels. And they didn't do that on the Nokia 808 PureView. So yes, you get pixel binning today, you get all the benefits of it, but you need the debayering or the algorithm that fixes this rainbow effect, the demosaicing algorithm. And some do it better than others. And that's another thing, everybody's got their proprietary algorithms around that.
Yeah. So at the time I was starting to review and test obviously the Windows phones for the 1020, also Android phones, the Galaxy S2, which you may mention later. That was one of my first. The Nexus 1 was my first Android phone, but the Galaxy S2 was the one that really showed me, wow, this could actually change the world. This is good enough that everyone will want to own this. But in terms of the imaging, the 808 here was still winning my camera phone tests. 2012, 2013, 2014. The 1020 then carried on 2015. It was winning in all my tests against the best of Android and the best of iPhone at the time. And it wasn't until about 2017, 2018 that the iPhones actually started to even compete here. Many of the Nokia imaging engineers went to Apple, and like Ali Partanen, and helped influence their
I want to say iPhone 11, right? Was a tipping point.
About then, yeah.
Before that, it was kind of potato in iPhone 9. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were some highlights. We're going to talk about them. But we're talking camera phones right now. Are we wrapping that up and moving on? Because I want to add a few things.
I think we are. You go for it.
So I agree with obviously all of these. I think that we've covered all the critical ones, starting with. There were, some early Symbian phones that had, as you said, VGA 0.3 megapixel cameras, no autofocus. That was the very beginning, like 99, 2000-ish, and then The Koreans, the Japanese did some stuff in that realm too. And then Nokia and Sony Ericsson were really the ones in the West that were pushing the envelope. But I would say that we should mention the iPhone 4, and I know we're going to mention it in another context, but in terms of imaging, it introduced the first real camera on an iPhone, as in, proper autofocus. I mean, it did have autofocus before that, but fast enough, well done. It had HD video. I believe it was 1080p, which was pretty great. It had, good camera performance, and there it is.
I'm just photographing Miriam with the iPhone 4. So you snap the shutter button, and about a 1 second shot-to-shot time, which for now it seems appalling for an iPhone, but that's what it was at the time. And if I turn the HDR on, this is the interesting bit. I'm now shooting Miriam in HDR. So I'm snapping the photo now. 2, 3, 4, full 4 seconds. that's as slow as a Lumia 1020. But it was the dawn of HDR processing, and you could get genuinely spectacular shots in really bright sunlight, things you wouldn't have been able to photograph before.
To be fair, HDR had appeared on Android phones before that, so it's like it was new to the iPhone. But I want to mention, the reason I'm mentioning the iPhone 4 is because one of the things it did that was really good is it finally put the iPhone at a good average level of camera performance for the time. Galaxy S2 is, as you mentioned, is an honorable mention because, I had my first Android phone was the T-Mobile G1, which was, the HTC Dream. Camera was potato, but Nexus 1 was okay, but the camera again wasn't great. What I really think the Galaxy S2 showed me, and at the same time, I think the HTC Sensation came out at the same time. I think they were both kind of really trying to push the imaging. HTC did a few phones that were imaging centric in that time frame. We should mention the HTC One M7, which had that 4 megapixel sensor with very, very large pixels. Because
which had a unique feature whereby it was shooting photographs as the iPhones do since then. It was a great concept, but for the first time you could shoot, for example, a toddler or a pet doing something, and it would have been taking frames and photographs for a fraction of a second before you hit the shutter button.
Zero shutter lag, right.
And later on, you can select exactly which one of that burst you wanted to use as your photograph. That was... Yep.
It's called zero shutter lag. It's on every phone today, but back then that was a new thing. The other thing that the M7 introduced was OIS on an Android phone. So that was, wow, okay, we finally have that. So I just want to mention these for imaging. And of course, nowadays we have these crazy ultra phones. We should also mention, as I said, variable zoom, right? So there was that Zenfone Zoom or whatever it's called that had a variable zoom, but that wasn't, of course, there was the Galaxy K Zoom, whatever it's called. Is that what it's called?
I've got that here.
But that one essentially was a point-and-shoot camera grafted onto an Android Galaxy, mid-range Galaxy phone. And it was a massive thing.
Yeah. This, on the other hand, is variable zoom, and it's as slim as
so Sony, right?
Yeah.
Sony did, until the Xperia 1 Mark 8, which we just covered last week on the show, until then, it had the variable zoom. So that's actually really cool. Only on the telephoto, of course, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just bringing up zoom because I want to point out a phone that was significant. It was the Oppo Reno 10X, which was the first periscope telephoto on an Android phone. And, here we are today with the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, which I have, which has in addition to a crazy 200 megapixel 3X, folded, but Z-shaped tri-prism setup, has a periscope 10x telephoto as well. So, periscope telephotos are a dime a dozen nowadays. Some of them are L-shaped, some of them are Z-shaped, meaning that there's a tri-prism setup and it just looks like a normal lens on the outside, not that rectangular thing that an L-shaped folded lens would give you. But my point is, that was a big revolution as well. I want to give honorable mention to, this whole series of 48 megapixel sensors from Sony that was on every 48 megapixel mid-range Android phone forever and generally came with OIS, and it was a really solid sensor. It was the first pixel binned, affordable, widely available sensor for Android. And I think maybe iPhone, used it as well, but they didn't tell us. I don't know. The point is that was a revolution too, because now we could have affordable phones with 48 megapixel OIS that didn't suck. That had a solid baseline, right?
I'm torn really between saying, I've often said that smartphones have plateaued in terms of technology, and they have in the sense that a smartphone from 2020 would do perfectly fine today. There's no reason why not. And on the other hand, as you just said, the imaging and under the scenes, that there are refinements, especially in terms of cameras, which are continually impressing us, continually improving. So but in 2026, have we got to the point now, Miriam, where smartphone imaging has finally plateaued? There is physically not any more room inside the devices to get any more imaging and zoom goodness.
I don't know. I don't think we're plateauing. I mean, I think that, we're gonna have more. We're gonna have more. It's not gonna end. I think both in hardware and in software, we're continuing to move forward. I mean, every time I think we're done, like you, I'm like, we've reached no, somebody comes out with something else. And I think the Ultra phones today, I'm not talking about Samsung here because they're a pro phone in my book, and I've mentioned this on the podcast many times. The S26 Ultra is a pro phone. It's like up there with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, but it's the Oppo X9, Fine X9 Ultra, the Vivo X300 Ultra, the what else is there? There's of course, the Xiaomi, right? Xiaomi 17 Ultra. Those phones, there's been a series of them now for the last 3-4 years, and they are really, I think, pushing the envelope of what we're doing, both in hardware and software. And, these partnerships with Hasselblad, with Leica, with Zeiss, Nokia started it. They had the Zeiss partnership from the days of the N90, right? Like, I mean, it's been there for a while. And then, we saw...
It was Carl Zeiss back in the day.
Yeah, of course. But we do need to give an honorable one. Before we switch to the next part, we need to absolutely talk about one of the defining camera phone leaders, and that's Huawei. Like the P20, P30, P40 series really pushed the envelope in imaging until, our crazy regime here in the US put the kibosh on that, because they were about to launch on AT&T at CES 2019 or 2018 when they were squished away from this market. And I think if they had come, we would be in a different place in terms of competition on iPhone and Samsung. We have this big duopoly. I don't know how bad it is in the UK because you still have access to the Oppos and the others, but Xiaomi's. But for us here, it's really a duopoly. I mean, it's either Samsung or, iPhone, Apple. And then if you are adventurous, you'll get probably now you wouldn't anymore, get a OnePlus because we don't know what's happening with them in this market. Although I still recommend getting it because they promise support, and Oppo is a parent company and they could offer support. But, we have Motorola, which is doing some cool stuff. The Moto Razr Fold that I reviewed not for long ago is a really solid phone with really great imaging. The Moto Razr, the flip phone, not so great as imaging, but as solid. I think it's a better flip phone than the Samsung. So anyway, we have very few choices, and Huawei would have made a difference. The P40 Pro Plus,
yes, I had that,
was the first dual periscope telephoto phone. So it had 4 rear lenses. It had an ultra wide, a main. They were all, pretty big sensors for their time. And they had 2 periscopes, a 3X and a 10X. And I remember taking that phone on a trip to Washington State, which is, the northwest of the US, and being blown away by the image quality. This was well into the ban, but I was still able to get PR units from Huawei at the time. And, look, honorable mention to Honor, who is continuing Huawei's hard work and is available in the West. I have the Magic V6 here, the folding phone. I have played with some of the others, and they're still very, very solid. There's a lot of things I don't like about their software, but in terms of hardware and photography, they're definitely doing a good job.
Yeah.
So
Huawei was so innovative back in the day. I still remember, this is, I'm guessing, about a year or two before the ban in America. We had, the very first time I saw refocusing with variable depth of field. In other words, you shoot the kind of portrait effect, software depth of field, which wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect today on current phones, but it's the first time I'd ever seen it used where you capture more information than just the image at capture time. And then you do something really interesting with it. I find that fascinating. And they were the first
who else
company.
did that? HTC with the HTC One M8, the success to the M7, was the first phone with a depth sensor added to the main sensor.
Did they use it? I can't
captured
remember.
additional data and let you refocus after the fact.
Okay, I never had the M8. I had the M7. I marveled at its speakers. I don't remember having the M8 for very long.
Okay, quiz for you, and this is not a put you on the spot quiz, but it's I want to know now because I can't remember. Which phone was the first phone with an ultra wide?
I'm tempted to say LG, one of the early
You're
LGs.
Right. You're right. I think it was one of the G phones.
Might have been G2, G3, G4, what in that range somewhere.
No, the G4 still had a single lens. It's G5, I think it's G6.
Was the G5 was the one with the modular buttons,
correct.
Wasn't it?
G6.
Yeah.
G6.
Okay.
G6 was the first that was metal and glass, like no longer plasticky from LG. And the first phone, by the way, folks, big deal here, with a 16:9 aspect ratio.
And now we've gone way beyond that.
Oh, sorry, 18:9. 18:9, meaning you could put two square apps side by side. Because 16:9 was the default. So 18:9. And then we went all the way to 21:9. Thank you, Sony. And now they don't do that anymore, sadly. But
it's fascinating to look at the aspect ratios in terms of surface area, though. I was having a debate on the last Phone Show Chat podcast with Ted. And he was talking about the Lumia 1520, which you'll remember, the giant Windows phone from back in the day, which had a 6-inch screen. He said, yes, but we've got small pixels now with 6.1. I said, yeah, but that was at 16:9. That's a heck of a lot more square centimeters than your modern Pixel at 18:9 or 19:9.
They look much bigger than our phones today, these phones. Like another one that was like that was, do you remember this? The LG G Flex.
I never saw one, but I know it.
6-inch OLED, 16:9, curved, right? Because it's the whole point of the Flex.
Yeah.
720p AMOLED, but on a 6-inch screen. It was the worst resolution. You could see the pixels, but it was the first plastic OLED display. It was flexible, and you could step on the phone and it would bend and the screen wouldn't shatter. It was amazing.
Talking of seeing pixels, can I transition? I wrote an article and did a video on my top 4 influential phones of all time. Now, this is not the best phones of all time. It's the phones which I think changed the industry in some way. And we'll come back to the resolution in just a moment. The N95, we covered it earlier.
But please expand.
Yeah, the tagline for this phone was, "It's what computers have become," which didn't explain it very well. The other tagline was, "There's not one thing in my pocket, but many." And that did explain it, because it basically replaced your camera and your MP3 player and iPod. And it was your multimedia
Swiss Army
player.
knife.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to do, you could do with this one device. You plug it into a TV and it becomes your media player, playing films through your high-resolution TV, through its audio out socket. So the headphone socket wasn't just headphones, it was a multimedia out, and you could add a cable that connected it to presumably composite inputs on a TV. There's so much this N95 could do. And it was the first phone that had everything the modern phone has, all in the one device in 2006.
It was remarkable. I mean, look, it has a front-facing camera that at the time you could only use on 3G networks, because there was, no Skype existed on Symbian, so you could use it on Skype, I believe.
But that's a good slinky link into my second most influential phone of all time, which was the iPhone 4, which had FaceTime. And it's the first time you could do over data and over Wi-Fi video calling with people. And this was a revolutionary idea at the time, because before that, all you had was the 3G calling, as you say, which almost no one did. All of a sudden, everybody was doing it. And since then, we've had every single messaging platform under the sun has incorporated video, and it set up a trend. And you mentioned display resolution. The Retina, I know Steve Jobs made a big thing of Retina resolution, but as far as I can see, and I've looked at most of the competition, it was the highest resolution screen
100%.
on a phone at the time.
For a long time. HTC was one of the first to do something like 1080p with the butterfly, and then we got 1440p, that was LG. So LG G3 or G2 had 1440p Quad HD display. OLED. Right. But my point is, that was way after the iPhone 4. Yeah. And that was finally Retina on Android side. But you're right.
Also on the iPhone 4, there's so many. I named it as one of my most influential because there are so many other features. There's the fact that it's got the first custom silicon for Apple. So we're breaking away from off the shelf.
Correct?
Yeah. Off the shelf cellular chips from other places. They designed their own to make everything work beautifully. And the battery life on this thing was insane. I don't know if you remember iPhones back in the day, but the standby, if you didn't turn the screen on, it would run for a week and a half, and it wouldn't lose battery. You can't do that with a modern phone.
True.
And what else did it have?
Design. This
Design,
is like,
yes.
I mean, it's the prototype for every jewelry grade manufactured phone we have today.
Yeah, Gorilla Glass front and back, and the stainless steel surround, which I've still got on my iPhone 14 Pro somewhere. But yeah, this prototype, we haven't slimmed down that much actually. This was only 8 or 9 millimeters, and this was in 2010, and this was so much sleeker and more jewel-like and more premium than the plastic Nokias I was used to dealing with. I love my plastic Nokias and their cameras and their rails and their hinges and their twiddly bits. But this, I had to admit, this was something that was quite special in the hand. And just to put you into a context, at the time, this would have been, I know you bought a couple back in the day, this would have been something approaching $1,000, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I bought them in Canada because it's the only place I could get them unlocked. And I wanted one for myself and my spouse, Theo. And we went to Canada because, I'm a citizen here and I didn't live here at the time like I do now, but we just pick them up. I paid almost $2,000 or something or whatever it was. I think it was 600 each. So like a lot of money.
I picked this up on eBay last week or the week before, £20 stroke $20.
Nice.
Mint condition iPhone 4 with charger for £20.
Amazing.
It's amazing how the value of things changes over the years. Something that would have cost you £1,000 16 years ago, it still works as well as it did back in the day, other than obviously compatibility with modern apps. It still works just as well.
What version of iOS is it on?
I will tell you. I'll do a live demo.
Because, I wonder if you have if it's because that's the one thing that people really prize, it not upgraded. So it has the original software on it.
This is a version iOS 9.3. Oh, you probably can't see that on your Patreon video, but yeah, 9.3.
That's quite later than what it shipped with. Probably the latest thing that it could support.
Yeah. So, but modern applications, you can go into the App Store. I don't think it even shows apps because they just don't run on this anymore.
Exactly.
Apple's just turned off all the server. So it's impossible to use these phones. It's impossible to use my beloved Nokia 808 other than taking photographs and video. It doesn't connect to anything. All the software protocols and the security, they've changed over the years.
Are there some ROMs available for some of the Nokia Symbian phones right now?
Yeah, I've got a custom ROM on this Nokia 808, and it does connect in certain ways, but it's things like the latest Wi-Fi protocols, the latest security certificates. Everything just falls apart so quickly.
Yeah.
But it's fun to play with custom ROMs.
All right. So I think I want to point out the iPhone 4, folks, is peak design. In my opinion, look, no camera bump, right? Metal and glass, but like just iconic. You can show this phone today and it still looks like a modern phone. Like it is, 16 years old.
Yeah. People really should watch the video version of the show because I'm showing a lot on camera.
No, but I'll put the link to your video as well because you have a much higher quality recording of it.
The third most influential we already talked about, which is the Nokia 808, which introduced the whole concept of computational photography.
Yep.
The 808 was not a rubbish smartphone, but by then the apps just weren't there and people weren't supporting it. So as a smartphone, it was a bit of a non-starter. I still loved it because the camera was so great. And it started all of the imaging stuff we've been talking about and you talking about on your show for the last decade has all derived from the computational algorithms and the ideas that Nokia pioneered back in 2010. But my fourth, and this is the contentious one, my fourth most influential smartphone of all time, I haven't got in front of me, which is very disappointing. And I chose the original Google Pixel Fold. And it was a terrible seller. Google never really marketed it. It wasn't terribly robust, and the dust and detritus got behind the flexible screen and caused bumps and all sorts of returns. But they had the idea right. Now, I was tempted to go for the Surface Duo from Microsoft, which is the same aspect ratio, 2 apps side by side, maximum productivity. The Surface Duo did it, of course, with 2 sheets of Gorilla Glass, which is great because they're not going to break. But people did rather complain about the gap in the middle when watching media. So I'll move beyond Microsoft. I'll say, I reckon Google's original Pixel Fold form factor for the folding phone, that's exactly where we need to get to. And I think later this year, we're about to get my wish.
I think you're right. I think that I want to add to that I believe before the Pixel Fold, there was the Oppo Find N and Oppo Find N2, which had the same form factor, passport size, a little smaller, but the same aspect ratio, very important. So they were still not committed to what we are seeing today, with the Find N6, which I have in my pocket here, which is, the same form factor as the
Samsungs,
as the Samsungs, right? 19.5 by 9 or whatever it is, the standard aspect ratio that we have today. So
I never saw those Oppo Find N devices. They weren't terribly commonplace over in the UK.
No,
I know
they're really rare. I have the original N, but not the N2. Then the N3 was the OnePlus Open, and that's when they switched form factor. And then there was no N4 because 4 is not a lucky number in Chinese. 5 I had, and 6 I have. But here's you're right. So we're going to have an iPhone supposedly called Ultra, which is going to be a passport form factor aspect ratio folding phone. We're going to have the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide, I guess it might be called. So, I mean, there are a bunch of things coming, and that's very exciting. I think that I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm pretty happy with the existing form factor for folding phone myself. I mean, I've gotten used to it, I guess, since the OnePlus Open, which really got me into the book-style folding phone. Before that, I was kind of like, with the very tall aspect ratio that Samsung had for a really long time until the Z Fold 7, I wasn't really on board, Oh, you get your Surface.
Yeah, but the whole concept of
is
folding
this Duo
phones...
or Duo 2?
This is the original Duo, no camera bump on the back. Yeah. Which I think this is elegant. It doesn't pretend to be a great camera phone. It's just an insanely good productivity device.
You can still use that today, correct?
Absolutely. This is on the very latest June 2026 Play System updates.
Nice.
The Android version is old, but as long as it's fully up to date in terms of the middleware, which is the important bit for staying compatible with modern apps. The folding screen phones, what irks me, apart from the price, is the fact that you've got a whole outside screen, and then you open it up and you've got a whole other screen, which I guess is the point. But there's too much technology for a slight change.
Well, as somebody who's been using those phones extensively now, I mean, I like that, for me, I travel a lot, as you know. So and I'm walking through the airport, one-handed front screen. When I sit down at my airplane seat, I open it up, and then I have more real estate to write, to do work, to be productive, run two apps side by side. So I think that's kind of the killer feature, right? But is that it? Do you have any other critically important phones in your lineup to that are iconic to you that you think are significant?
The only one I'd say, I'll put this away now, just letting you enjoy the superb
really
hinge action.
Thin, folks. Show the USB port. That way people have a point of reference.
There we are. Yeah. So when people talk about thin phones these days, that's original Surface Duo was 4.8 millimeters. Yeah. What I want to show you, we're back to quiz time, Miriam. We're back to quiz time. This is very, very rare.
Oh boy!
I've also got the rare Nokia 9210 from 2000 communicator from Nokia, huge thing, and it is almost working order. But I want to show this because this is completely mint condition. This is do you know it? You may not have had.
It's one of the communicators, correct?
Yeah, it is. This is.
But I don't know which one. 93.
Yeah, this is the 9300, which was incredibly slim for the time.
Yeah, it's much smaller than the others. It didn't have a camera though.
Didn't have no camera. It's deliberately designed for the business market. I mean, I could turn it on and boot it up, but yeah, it's surprisingly slim, incredibly dinky. It feels really, even though it's not metal, it feels beautifully designed and smooth in the hand. And this is fully working, and I can still boot up my old OPL programs on it and run it in 2026.
So E90, right, would have been the successor to this, but on modern at the time Symbian, correct?
Do you want me to go and get that as well? You're just testing me at this point, aren't you? One Nokia E90.
Yes. Oh my God, so nice. That hinge is also pretty iconic.
Yeah, it's very much like the Surface Duo hinges. If you look closely as it closes, the way the cams work are very similar to the Surface Duo and the original Pixel Fold. But yeah.
Yep.
But that was a lovely device, and this was all metal. You literally could knock nails in with this thing, and it was.
Well, most Nokia phones were pretty solid. I mean, the N95 was a little rubbery and plasticky, but Look, I
Yeah.
think you bring up, since we're bringing up some Nokias here. I think for me another bunch that really stood out was the Nokia 707. I think it was 770, the tablet, the first Linux tablet they
Yes.
made. That was not a phone, but I had that paired with a like Verizon flip phone, because at the time that Verizon was the only one having 3G, and I used it as like a very productive little portable tablet for a while. Then I had the N900, the follow
Yes.
up to that.
Yeah.
I want to mention those, of course, because they're pretty important. That brings us to, of course, the N9. Like, I have a pristine unicorn white N9 in a box in San Francisco
That's rare.
somewhere.
That is rare.
Very
Yeah,
rare.
Yeah.
64 megabytes of storage. Oh, sorry, gigabytes.
But that
quite
N9
something.
and that the MIMO interface was very influential in what came later with BlackBerry 10.
Yes.
I guess the Palm Pre. What did that run? What was the OS?
That was WebOS.
Yeah, because they all had similar ideas. The idea of using gestures from different directions for different functions.
Let's throw a few phones in there that I think are important. You brought up the Palm Pre. I think the Palm Pre is critical because it brought the unified inbox concept that eventually the N9 and the Linux side of Nokia's OS is supported. That now Sailfish supports Yola's OS. We got to mention the Palm Pre as well for the first wireless charging. Before even Nokia implemented Qi, right? Because Nokia was one of the first with Qi. Just let's talk about that.
I thought the Lumia 1020, Lumia 920 was first, but you could be
but
right.
the Pre came before that.
I guess
Pre
that
was
was
2008.
but that was proprietary wireless charging.
No, it's absolutely. I'm just saying it's the first that had wireless
Okay.
charging, like
Yeah.
magnetic
Okay.
too, which is like before Qi too.
All right,
So
okay.
other worth mentioning, and I think there's a big fandom of WebOS Palm Pre devices because the OS was really brilliant, to be honest.
It's fascinating that you were talking about all these niche OSs. I also sent you a link to a image file in our emails with the smartphone platforms. Miriam can link to it in the show notes. And I wanted to plot over 30 years, literally 3 decades, the mainstream smartphone mobile operating systems and the eras in which they were kind of prevalent. And I deliberately omitted WebOS and MIMO and KaiOS and Sailfish because they are so incredibly geeky and niche. But the
they're
image
very important. As I said, they brought up some really great, like WebOS really exists on TVs now, on LG TVs, but it's not what it used to be. And what it used to be was really, really amazing.
Yeah.
Even Palm OS, like we have to talk about the Trio. It was a significant device. BlackBerry, of course, we haven't mentioned.
Yeah.
I would say that I think the original BlackBerry phone, not the pager, I think needs to be mentioned as a turning point because of push notifications and the whole message, the concept of messaging on device. I mean, for many people, that was their first smartphone.
Yeah, the BlackBerry Bold, and is it the 9000? Did I get the number right?
Yeah, the Bold
there?
is the 9000. I'm talking way before that. Like,
okay.
Their first BlackBerry was a pager. Then the second BlackBerry was actual phone. And I think it's like 7000 series or 700. Anyway, it was, it had the scroll wheel before they had the optical trackpad thing.
Yeah.
Look, BlackBerry needs to be mentioned. Palm needs to be mentioned for both WebOS and for Palm OS and the whole, Trio line. And before that, the organizers, whatever you want to call them, the PDAs, right? The Palm PDAs.
Yeah, well, people will know that I made my start in mobile back in the Scion days.
Organizer, of
Scion
course.
PDAs, yeah.
The beginning of ARM,
What's interesting on my diagram, Miriam, if you look at our little suffixes beside each operating system saying how many bits they represent, how the architecture of each operating system, how large it was in terms of memory addressability. And so the early ones were 8-bit, then 16-bit, then 32-bit. And all of the 32-bit OSs, including Windows Phone, including the BlackBerry versions, they all died a death. The only two which invested into full 64-bit to the current day are Android and iOS.
It's true.
And the two are very much linked. Apple and Google had the vision to say, we're going further. We can see the future. It's 64-bit. And by doing that, all of a sudden, storage and RAM and application scope, everything just blew the competition out of the water.
I think we should also give an honorable mention to Windows Phone, right? Because, we mentioned the Lumia 1020 and also the larger Lumia, what was it?
15, 20.
Thank you. And so look, I love Windows Phone. A lot of you did too. I still have a whatever the last Lumia they made was 950.
950 and 950 XL. I've got all of those here
XL.
as well.
Yeah, I've got the XL.
I've got a whole Windows Phone library in the back.
Yeah, no, I know. But I'm just saying I'm bringing it up because there's a lot of things that Windows Phone did right. The tiles, the interface, and that, we're starting seeing some of that come back in some ways. But, again, all of the OSs we use today are a bit of a, they feed off of each other, but they also take some of the best things from like, WebOS, from, Sailfish, from a bunch of other stuff. And I think this is what's important. And that's why mentioning some of these, dead OSs or niche OSs like Yola is important because they do influence to some extent.
Can I mention one of my favorite Windows Phone features, which no one talks about? It was one of the very earliest Windows Phone features, which you had in the Metro UI, as it's called, where you had kind of scrollable tabs along the top. And the contact store was integrated into all your social networks.
Correct.
So I would go to Miriam Joie's contact record. It would not only have your telephone and address and email and so forth. I would swipe over in the interface under Miriam Joie. It'd have your latest Facebook posts, your latest Twitter posts. And the early days of social networks were brilliantly integrated into Windows Phone. And one by one, the network said, we're not letting you do that. We want you to see our content in our apps. And it all got apps, but it was a great idea.
It's worth pointing out that all of this started with the Microsoft Kin, which is one of the greatest failures of all time in terms of phones. I had both of them, the dumb phone, social media centric phones that predate the Windows Phone, but post-date the Zune, because we had to mention the Zune, like in the same way as we mentioned the iPod when we talked about the Nokia N91. Look, this is, you're getting a medley of all the good stuff. But look, I do think that there are so many critical phones. I think we touched on many of them. I know we didn't talk much about BlackBerry or Windows Phone. No, we didn't talk much about some of the, more exotic OSs out there, like, Sailfish and Memo and all that stuff. But the reality is all of this shaped where we are today. And I think that, we've seen some glimpses of some of this stuff coming back, and I'm really happy to see that. And I think that, HTC, it's a great loss to have HTC gone, like as we mentioned them a few times here. It's a great loss to have LG gone from the playground. I'm glad Sony is hanging on, even though it's cannot be profitable. I think LG should have stayed and just made one flagship a year just to show us what they can do. That cost is no object. Just do something and be like, that's what we're doing. It'll get, financed by our washing machines and televisions.
That's kind of what Sony's doing, of course.
Well, that's really what Sony's doing. And I don't understand why Korea couldn't do that. LG couldn't do that. Just to kind of keep Samsung in check. Just,
keep them honest. Yeah.
I mean, look, Samsung's done really great. I think that the folding phone, we're 7 years in now or something like that, 8 years almost. Yeah. And I think we've been mature for a couple of years. I think that 2024 or so, like OnePlus Open, I think that the Z Fold 7 is really the tipping point for Samsung, where they finally got it right in terms of form factor and shape and size and width and everything. Because, I agree with you, the Passport thing is better, but I think that they finally became, they were sitting on their laurels for so long, they finally became competitive again because of the Chinese. And the Chinese are killing it right now. I think that for me, if I didn't have access to all these devices, it'd be a hard pick between some kind of Oppo phone or OnePlus or whatever former BBK group, Realme, as my main phone, and Pixel. I'm Pixel, but I'm Pixel mostly because I'm so not invested emotionally in any way, but like I have so much of my info in Google, and it does Google really well. The Pixel, obviously, including for better or for worse, the AI stuff from Gemini. I have a lot of mixed feelings about that, but I still find it very helpful. So I wish I could get the Pixel experience on some of that incredible Ultra or folding hardware that Oppo makes, and Samsung gets you close, to be honest. I think that, I don't consider the S26 Ultra to be Ultra, but if you're going to buy a phone, that's not a bad one.
Here's a question for you. We are expecting the iPhone 18 Ultra, whatever they're going to call it, and also the Samsung have got their own wide fold coming out. Given that Pixel started this passport-sized folding thing, well, I know there was Oppo, but
but I agree with you.
But yeah, the original Pixel. Will Google, once these current releases are coming out, will Google go back and change their folding form factor to their original aspect ratio? Because I was saying, if I wasn't in the middle of an iOS Apple-centric family needing to stay compatible, I possibly wouldn't be using an iPhone. I would probably still be using that original Google Pixel Fold. And I'd absolutely love Google to come out with a Google Pixel Fold 27 or something, for 2027 with modern specs inside.
My pragmatic response to that is I don't think they're making a folding phone this year. And I think the reason for that is the economy and the Ramargeddon, or whatever you want to call it, the memory crisis we're experiencing. Here's a reality, Steve, and it's sad, but I think that I've been recommending people buy last year's phone the last 6 months because the prices are ridiculous. Like, here's a writing on the wall, right? The Pixel 10a is essentially a Pixel 9a with satellite connectivity and costs more. You can get a better deal on the 9a used or on sale. Yeah. Same with the Razr, the Moto Razr, the flip phone. The Ultra, which is your 70 Ultra, I believe in the UK, is almost currently twice the price of last year's model and is essentially identical. Yeah. Like you can buy the last year's Ultra for half the price on Amazon, $699 US, whereas the current one is $1,400 or $1,499, something ridiculous amount. So like I think I'm concerned that because of the RAM shortage, because of the price increases, Google doesn't, like, if you look at last year's folding phone they did, it's minor revision over the previous year. Now, there are some significant things there. First folding phone is IP69, but it wasn't competitive in terms of form factor. It was not in league with the rest of the best, right? So they're already behind. On top of that, their chips are always a little compromised, Tensor. I'm hoping Tensor G6 finally kicks in some performance, but I feel like it, the same way as they decided not to make a Pixel 10a that used a new chip, we might just see a very revised minor update of the Pixel Fold from last year. But a form factor change in this economy and this climate, I wish you were right, but I don't think it's happening. I actually don't think we're going to get a folding phone from them. We're just going to get the Pixel 11 and that's it. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about buying last year's flagship. And the iPhone system is a very good example because Apple have just raised their prices significantly on all the iPads, Macs, and so forth. They didn't raise the prices of the current iPhone 18 series. But obviously the next series, the 19 Pro, for example, will have a big price hike. But in the meantime, the iPhone 17 series is actually incredible value compared to the prices that are coming up. And if someone wants an iPhone over the next 3-4 years, get it now before the price rises change for the new products 100%. In September.
Yeah. And also remember this, folks. The 17 is one of the best phones Apple has ever done. I would say that it's the best affordable phone. Forget the 17e. It's not that great. The 17 is killing it, and it's not getting replaced until the spring. Remember, this fall, we're only getting the Pro and the Ultra. Then we'll get the Air and the regular and the E in the spring. So right now, if you need an iPhone and you don't care about the telephoto, you don't care about getting a Pro, your best bet is to buy a 17 now and wait it out because the prices are going to go up for sure.
Yeah. If I sound like I'm confused over model numbers, folks, my desk is literally covered with smartphones right now, and my voice is going and my brain is going. So apologies for that.
This is a good time to wrap up then. Steve, tell folks where they can find you on the internet, social media, whatever channels and websites you're still running where people can find either current content or archived content.
Yeah, I've kind of given up on most social media because it's just all turned to you know what. But we start the MeWe forums, MeWe.com, and I'm very active on the phone show chat group there. But my main website is still stevelitchfield.com. That's Litchfield with a T. And that links out to my YouTube channel, shorts and long videos, indexes, categories, and a vast, vast archive of Scion and Symbian and classic Nokia stuff and downloads and runtimes and my goodness knows what. So it's your first stop shop for old Scion, Symbian and Nokia. That's me.
Fantastic. Folks, you should check out this amazing content that Steve puts out still today on the YouTube, but also all the old stuff. It's really good. And you know where to find me on the internet, folks. I'm at Tankerl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character. Just drop the vowels and you'll get my handle pretty much everywhere. I'm primarily active on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And I have a TikTok, but you have to add my year of birth to the end of my handle, 69. So you know how to find me on social now. And so if it's your first time here because you're listening to Steve and he brought you here, please subscribe. The podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. There's a URL there where you can see and listen to the shows. But if you want, you can subscribe. I'm on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, etc. So find me there, subscribe. If your app lets you rate or review the show, consider doing that. That would be really great. And there's also an RSS feed there if you're old school and you want to add yourself to Pocket Casts or whatever. Yeah. Finally, well, not quite finally, but second to finally, there is a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast, monthly, roughly videos on there, mostly hands-on, some unboxing, some reviews of devices that, I get my hands on. So check that out, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. So like, subscribe. Click the bell, tell your friends, comment, all that good stuff. Finally, the Patreon, I mentioned it earlier, patreon.com/TNKGRL, like my handle, Tankerl. You can get the video version of this podcast a day in advance every week for $5 a month. You get to see some really cool phones this week from Steve here. You're bringing out the Sony Ericsson. Which one is that? That's the 800?
Yeah, the original P800.
Yeah, P800.
And the touchscreen was operated when you closed the flip.
Yes,
the buttons physically pressed on the touchscreen. It was amazing.
No weird cable connection there.
No.
Yeah. And so, folks, there you go. There's a good demo of what you could see on the video version. Sometimes we go overtime. Sometimes there's bloopers. So please, if you want, support me. $5 a month. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Steve, wow, what a show. Thanks for driving. Appreciate it.
It's been a lot of fun. It always is when I get all my old phones out and we reminisce, Miriam, and we go back so far and have so much in common.
Thanks for taking the time, and you're completely messing up your desk with phones today. I appreciate it.
All right. Nice to be here.
All right, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Stay tuned. I will have Steve again in the future at some point. We'll do some other retrospective. I want to go all the way back to maybe the days of the early ARM Scion stuff with you at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But stay tuned. We'll have another podcast next week. And until then, Cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.